what if there were no drums, computers? Like, I'm thinking about the stuff that I do for my vocation. What if that didn't exist? I would do something else. Who knows what that would be? But if you define yourself with these titles, then you're just assuming that at some point those things were, created. And no. What if they never existed? What would I be? I would still be me.
The first person we lead is ourself. Welcome to Because This Matters, a podcast about leading from the inside out. I'm Mark Poise, and in each conversation we explore how values take shape and become action, how people with clarity navigate change, challenge, and growth with intention. Today's guest is someone who has shaped countless musicians over the past several decades, and someone who has personally shaped my own life and path in profound ways. Steve Rucker is Professor of Practice and Director of Contemporary Drum Set Studies at the Frost School of Music at the University of Miami, where he has taught since 1979. Across more than 4 decades at Frost, he has mentored generations of musicians while building one of the most respected contemporary drum set programs in the country. As a performer, Steve's career has taken him around the world. He recorded and toured with the Bee Gees, appearing on broadcasts including The Tonight Show, Late Night with David Letterman, The Oprah Winfrey Show, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and the Royal Variety Performance. His performing and recording career also includes work with Michael Jackson, Pat Metheny, Gloria Estefan, Johnny Cash, Jaco Pastorius, and many others. At Frost, Steve directs the Funk Fusion Ensemble, which has received the Downbeat Student Music Award every year since 2002. He also founded the Ruck Ensemble, an original hip-hop and funk group built around collaborative composition and production. Beyond performing and teaching, Steve continues to explore new creative territory as a composer, releasing dozens of original works in recent years, and even developing a parallel skill set as a coder since 2000. Over the years, Steve has quietly shaped the thinking, musicianship, and lives of artists across genres, often long before the world ever knew their names. Steve, it is an honor to welcome you to the show. Thanks for coming on with me.
Mark, the honor's all mine. Yeah, great to be here.
I'm just curious from the outset, how do you feel when somebody reads all that back to you?
Um, it's it's kind of like you're talking about another person. It's like, wow. I guess if you hang in there in the music business long enough, you'll do a few different things. But yeah, I've just been lucky, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for the way things came together for me. You know, I I think there's maybe a certain amount of intent that went into the process, but as you know, we've had that conversation. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very grateful for the
You,
career.
you mentioned the intent, and that's the whole central premise of this show, people who live with clarity and intention.
Hmm.
When did that arise for you? Was it something that naturally showed up? Was it instilled?
Actually, it was fairly recent in my life. I mean, just recent for me is like maybe 30 years ago, right? I I stumbled on uh, a set of DVDs by Joseph Campbell, um, and I went down that road, and I started really getting into the spirituality aspect of it. Read books by Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, sort of started, and I think we've talked about that, right?
Yeah.
Quite often. And I started thinking about, well, like the forces that shape my life and how much I had a part in it. You say, oh, wow, you're really lucky. Well, yeah, there's some of that, but there's some other stuff too, right? As manifesting your life, creating your life,
Hmm.
and it's easy to take the point of view, oh, well, you know, wow, nothing ever happens to me, woe is me, you go down that road. But I think if you keep a positive attitude, and Wayne Dyer said, um, what you really, 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 really want, you'll get. But the clincher is what you really, 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 really don't want, you'll also get. So you have to focus your attention on the things that you want.
Yeah. Is he the original person who said where attention goes, energy flows, or am I
Oh, that
misattributing that?
sounds good. That sounds like Wayne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe him or who knows at this point, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
And
30
some sage that lived thousands of years ago,
also also yeah, isn't
Yeah,
it funny how the old is always new again?
yeah, yeah.
So 30 years ago, was there like a catalyst for that, or how did that happen?
Uh, there was a set of DVDs that was sitting on, the, sort of TV stereo unit, whatever. It was about mythology, right?
Okay.
In my opinion about mythology, it was like, oh, stupid, you know, ignorant people that believe in all of this crazy stuff. That was my feeling about it. And one day, I don't know, nothing was going on, so I popped it in there. It's like, oh my goodness, wow, mythology is. Who said it? Maybe it was Joseph Campbell that said it was another man's religion. But it's actually things that affect your life and guide your life. And so that was the catalyst, really. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joseph Campbell. And at that point, I went deep down the rabbit hole, and I started, wow, who is this dude? And turned out, he was like the foremost authority on comparative religion. Um, he taught at Sarah Lawrence. There are all of these lectures. So I started listening to all of that stuff. It's like, wow, where's this been all my life? And then you reflect back and you go, I might have been sort of aware of this at some point, but it just didn't, uh, you know, it, it wasn't obvious.
Yeah. Like it didn't
And
land the
it
same
didn't
way.
land exactly. So I had, you know, kind of an epiphany there, with old Joe, and then, started exploring other things. Um, Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now. I was playing a gig somewhere, and I got the book for who knows why, and I read it on the plane. It's like, oh my goodness, wow, woo, this is kind of life-changing stuff. And he himself says, I I had this revelation, and then I found out, no, I didn't make this up. This has been around for thousands of years. I just happened to stumble on it, in his own Eckhart Tolle kind of way.
Yeah.
And
And he has talent for putting words to it in a
yeah,
fresh way
he
that
does. He
clearly
does.
by his book sales it lands with lots and lots of people.
Yeah, he
Um,
does. Yeah.
so I think his contribution is still immensely valuable, and
Mhm.
I think you're the person that turned me onto that book when I was in college, to be honest.
Maybe so.
I
That,
think
that
so.
sounds right. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it just becomes a gateway to things. Um,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
you mentioned something that made me think about this notion I often hear from people that experiences shape beliefs, but
Mm-hmm.
also then beliefs shape your experiences.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when a new fresh influence comes in, that can really just turn into like a feedback loop in, hopefully a positive way. And I think
Mm-hmm.
with these kind of topics, it is.
Mm.
You have thoughts on that?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we could spend hours talking about that. There's, and we may have talked about this as well. There's this concept that there's a belief, and a belief is, if you go to church or temple or mosque and they, okay, this is the law. Okay. And being human, you can, oh, okay, well, if I follow these beliefs, then I'll achieve salvation or whatever. Okay. That's a belief in a certain context. But then there's a knowing, right? And a knowing is when you actually experience something and you feel it deeply. And it's like, I know that to be true. And I've had those. I'll never forget. I was in Key West years and years ago, and I was meditating, and all of a sudden I had, for lack of a better way of putting it, a glimpse of the eternal, right? It's like, wow. And that was a knowing. That wasn't like you read a book, you go to a place and they say, this is true. This is true.
Yeah.
No, when you actually experience it, then you know. And I talk to my students about this, about musical things, for a drummer, let's say, okay,
Yeah.
let's take it to our common ground here. One of our common grounds,
Yeah.
the experience of a groove, right? So I had a middle school band director who was sort of my mentor, but he was a hard case. He was a whiplash kind of guy, but he said, when you get in that groove, nobody can beat you out of it with a stick. And I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I didn't know. Once you experience that groove, it's like, okay, that's a knowing. That's
Yeah.
not your band director, your teacher, your colleague, your friend telling you, oh, well, this is going to be really cool. It's like, how do you describe a mango, right? Unless you've eaten a mango. Well, it's sweet, but it's sort of got a kind of a sour thing. It's like, no, you have to
Yeah.
eat them. Swimming, right? I didn't know how to swim until I was really older and I should have known better. So you don't know what it's like to swim unless you're swimming, right? And
Direct
certain
experience.
beliefs that you have, yeah, it's experience. And Joseph Campbell, we're getting back to Joe again. Joe was in this interview with Bill Moyers. Bill was asking about his beliefs. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, I might be totally wrong, but it's great it makes sense in our conversation. I, I don't have beliefs. I have experience. So I've experienced things, and that's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, which sounds separate than that extra layer of cognizing it, thinking about it
yeah,
and
yeah,
codifying it, etc.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
a value in the direct experience, which the mystical, any mystical tradition is basically advocating for that over
uh-huh,
over words and forms and etc.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I do
How?
have to tell you that, sorry, that
Yeah.
this whole sort of mystical, spiritual thing came along, a little bit later in life for me because I was, you know, just, sort of, sort of poo-pooed the whole idea of, oh, well, you know, these gurus and sages and, it's like, it's crazy talk, you know?
Would you be willing to paint a more detailed picture about the time before this? What was Steve like? What was driving
Mm.
you before this in life?
So I guess uh, I was an avid learner throughout sort of middle school and high school. Oh gosh, I really got into early computer technology, and I was into that. Did some independent study things. I guess the theme is, I was, kind of a, intellectual nerd kind of guy, and then I got more into music, and it's like, oh wow, this is. I'm not saying they're in conflict, but they were really different things, right? to be
Yeah.
the math science guy, and then the guy who started to grow his hair out and play, you know, um, jazz music and rock music and all of that. So there was a point in my life where I sort of had to decide which road I'm going to go down. So I started out in college as an electrical engineering major, right? And I went to a really good electrical engineering school, a good North Carolina State at the time. It was a great school for that. And I'm hanging out with all these guys with slide rules hanging off their belts and everything. And then, uh, I would go, I really miss the music. And there was an old piano in one of the rooms, and I'd go instead of, working on my calculus, I'd go and play piano. And then it's like, this is not for me. So I took a test that determines your um, aptitude and your desires and your inclinations, whatever. And I was so opposed to that whole math science thing that I skewed the results, and it said, you should be in sociology. So I did that for a couple of years. That was a total waste of time. Uh, with all due respect to sociologists, it just wasn't for me. It wasn't definitive enough. I mean, there's a slight correlation between income and education. I don't know. So it's like, but some years before, somebody told me, don't major in music, it'll ruin it for you. And I'm just like, okay, forget that. I'm going to go to Berklee College of Music and I'm going to study music, right? And I told my parents, and my dad, you know, loved the man. He was a great mentor to me, cut me off basically and said, okay, you're going to do music, then you're on your own, right? So I did that went to Berklee for a minute. Um, I got a letter from a good buddy of mine who had gone to Miami when I went to Boston and said, well, the school's great down here. And I'm sitting on the beach writing you this letter, and I'm up at Berklee, freezing my tail off, said, okay, I'm coming down. And the rest is history. I came down, finished up a music degree, and really started playing a lot, 5 hours a night, 5 days a week, really gigging and really getting into music. But still, my head went from the math science guy to the music guy. But I don't think that I was the at least I wasn't aware of the depth spiritually, right, that was going on. And I'd have these moments, when I was playing where I realized, wow, there's something deeper than just these sounds coming off of the stage.
You're sort of tapping into it in that moment.
Tapping into it and realizing, wow, there's something really kind of cool going on here. And it really wasn't. I mean, I think that Joseph Campbell really opened the door. Actually, now that we're talking about it, there was a book called "Drumming on the Edge of Magic" by Billy Hart.
Wow.
And I read. Somebody told me about that, so I read that book, and it's all about the drum and the history and the spirituality and all of that. And he mentions Joseph Campbell in it. All right. So
Wow.
I'm having an epiphany with this. And so, oh, Joseph Campbell. And then, so I think probably way back in the back of my mind when I saw this uh, Power of Myth, I think was the name of the book and the video series. I think, oh, it shows, oh, I read about him. So yeah. So it all came together.
Wow. I didn't know that book existed.
It's it's kind of a cool book.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy, man.
When you're telling me about your journey, I never even knew about these sort of other phases of early college study for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the sort of debate that seems to rage on about whether you follow your passion or whether
Mm-hmm.
you follow your curiosity. And as
Oh
a
man.
listener, it
Yeah.
strikes me that you might somehow be doing both this whole time.
Well,
What do you have to say about that?
well, I guess they're kind of they can sort of be the same, can't they? You
I don't
know,
know. I don't know. It sounds that
I
way
I I
in
I
your life
think
and your path.
I think maybe so. I think maybe there it's at least part of the same pie.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard. For years and years, I've had that Joseph Campbell "Follow Your Bliss" sticker on in my studio. That's a tough one, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
To follow your bliss. And I
The
think he certainly did it, and I know there's a lot of people that do, uh, but, life has some interesting, you know, left turns and
yeah.
right turns and, here and there.
So based on what you've shared so far, I hear certain things that stand out to me that I might label as, for instance, humility, a commitment to growth and learning, a
Mhm.
commitment to service to others as a teacher and a mentor. Um, do you identify with sort of defined word phrase type values that you rest on, or is it more of that sort of direct experience thing? Like I just try to stay aligned with
Mm.
this feeling.
I think maybe it's the latter. I do like to throw out phrases every once in a while if they resonate, you know, um, follow your bliss,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But what I've noticed over the years is um, that everybody's wired differently, and so you have to find how you get to that person, how you can communicate to that person. And they're really different. And some people are really closed off, and it's hard to sort of get at them. So I think in my teaching anyway, if I have hard and fast here are Rucker's rules, um, then maybe it doesn't reach everybody. That I have to find how to reach someone. I think that you and I had a really nice sort of you know relationship as far as like right from the beginning about things and when we could reach things at a deeper level like pretty soon, into our um, the, our teaching. And I'm reminded of the teaching is the student and the teacher, right?
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
they
a
both
collaborative.
comprise the teaching. But
Yeah.
man, I'll never forget, and we've talked about this a lot over the years. Um, one of our lessons, you're like, don't tell me that, oh, Mark, yeah, that sounded really good. Like, be honest with me. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Like really, uh, be honest. And I don't want you you know, to tell me, what I'm doing right, how great I am, all that kind of thing. I want to grow. So that was our jumping off point.
Yeah.
I knew, okay, this is the way this guy is wired. So
Yeah.
we can go down, we can say, okay, that was okay, but what about this and this? Listen to this, right? There's some
Yeah.
inconsistencies here. We can go there. But and there's been a lot of writing and a lot of podcasts and a lot of talk about this over the years. The sort of teaching paradigm has changed. Um, Years ago, we had our Whit Seidner, great mentor to me. We had my Bill Hanna, my mentor back in North Carolina. We had these people that just, they told it like it was. It was like, um, you know, tough learning, right?
Yeah.
And, it, things have changed a bit. It's that that idea of, you beat someone up and if they survive, then they'll go on to be successful. And if they don't, then they'll do something else, right? Charlie Parker, right? Joe
Yeah.
Jones threw a symbol at him. He could have gotten crushed, and it's like, okay, I'm going to be a financial consultant, or I'm going to become the greatest saxophone player in the world. So, and that was the old way of doing things, right?
Yeah.
But it's different now. And so to get back to, you know, our experience, that kind of thing is less and less these days, you know? You have to be careful.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you know, now he's hurt and he's going to the dean or his parents or whatever, you know. And it's hard, you know, sometimes to uh to sort of walk that line, but is, you know, it's part of the teaching thing. So,
Yeah.
um I think uh I think that getting back to what you were talking about before, having, you know, hard and fast rules, I think I feel it out and try to find a way of getting points across to the student. And before our podcast, I do have to say this, that we, um, it, it- I reflect on our talks, you know, at lessons, which went way beyond drums
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And when I'm teaching a lesson now, I think, okay, we've been working on just, okay, here's a hand foot patterns and here's fun with paradiddles and stuff. I need to maybe take a step back and talk about something a little deeper than just, you know, the nuts
Yeah.
and bolts of drumming.
And that
If the
also,
student is open.
yeah, yeah, and that also supports them in their career too, towards some of the even those surface
Yeah.
level desired goals that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
need that growth on those fronts as well.
Yeah.
I've shared in public before, but not on this podcast, naturally, about um, how some of how our relationship between you and I evolved. But I knew when I came down to visit you at the school when I was a senior in high school, I knew right away I had to be there. And it was specific to
Wow.
I need to study under this man. Like this
Wow.
the school was great, and gosh, is the campus beautiful, but it really was actually about one person. It was like, I need to invest the next phase of my life under the tutelage of this man. And that was a big driver of, like, for instance, the situation you shared where I said, Steve, tell me the real difference between me and the highest level here,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because I was fully opted in. I knew that I had to be malleable. I knew that that was the way to follow through with the
Mm-hmm.
necessity that I be there and study
Mm-hmm.
with you. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know necessarily what was going to come out of it. I didn't have a certainty about what I would become. But
Mm-hmm.
that openness, I think, was shaped by the compulsion. Like, I have to be here. There's nowhere else for me to be. I have to
Wow.
be here.
Wow.
Um, and that's a testament. I know I'm not the only person who has felt that way over the years about what you have built at that school, university. And I think that it kind of dictates, sort of like, beliefs change experiences as well. I went in with that belief, and that shaped the experience that I showed up
Mm.
for. And as we got closer and you would open these doors of deeper things, deeper levels of awareness, expanded perspectives, it felt like we never lost the time for the more menial paradiddle drum things that we had to do either. We
We got some
somehow
stuff done.
somehow time would dilate, and we'd be able to
Uh-huh.
get everything in,
Uh-huh.
and I would be growing in all the ways I had to grow.
Mm-hmm.
If I could pivot back to this idea of all the different things that you do, because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people will have really fascinating stories where they've transitioned between things, but
Mm-hmm.
they usually end up leaving things behind along the way. And, oh, I was doing that, now I'm doing this. But
Right.
you carry a lot of things in parallel, and it seems like it
I do.
feeds you really well. I'm curious, is there a common thread you see between all the things that you do that kind of holds it all together and makes it make sense?
Um, Not really. You know, I'm just riffing here. Maybe if I thought about this a little longer, maybe I would find something. I mean, aside from financial, I think, so I do coding. I've been doing that for since, I guess, 2000. Um, and it addresses that math science part of my brain, and it's really different from music in a lot of ways I think one thing that uh, uh, I think was interesting in the beginning is, when you sit down behind the drums to play a show, you're just completely uh, committed to that, right? Hopefully, your attention is on doing this for however long it is. If it's an hour show, if it's a 4-hour gig, whatever, this is what I'm doing. All right.
Yeah.
No sidetracking, no, you know, um, let me go off and do this for a minute. It's like you're focused on it. So when I first started doing programming, I had that point of view, right? So I'd sit there for like 8 hours. I was working for a friend of mine doing coding, and he's like, Steve, take a break every once in a while. It's like, no, I treated it with that same sort of, y- you know, um, steadfast, got to do this. And there's still a little bit of that going on, but I think of it as two different things. However, it's been, um, coding, programming, developing, whatever, has been really interesting. I did it originally because down here in South Florida, things dried up in the summer and I wanted to keep you know, the finances going. And so I did it during the summer thinking, okay, I'll make some extra money. Didn't know that I would love it. So that's why I'm kind of still doing it. It's fun to do. And the cool thing about it is you can do it anywhere. You can take your laptop on the beach or while you're
Yeah.
traveling or whatever, and you can do it anywhere. But it does, financially, it relieves the stress of, oh, I have to keep doing these gigs that I don't want to do,
Yeah.
so I can do that. Um, and I can just take the gigs that I want,
Yeah.
so it gives me that flexibility. And I think for a long time, I'd get up in the morning going, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm teaching like all day, and at night I come home and I do coding, and because the people that I work for, that I do the programming for, think I'm full time with them, and the university thinks I'm full time with them, and I have to keep this image that I'm doing 2 full time gigs. God, I'm crazy. Like what? And then it sort of dawned on me fairly recently. It's like, you know, I think I like to be like super busy all the time. So it's not for everybody, right?
Yeah.
But I think I kind of dig it. And then the more recent thing, starting with lockdown, is um, I I've been into composing as long as I can remember, but I didn't really pursue it uh, vigorously until lockdown happened. And I've put together a studio that you see behind me, and I started writing, and people are like, oh, this writing thing, well, that's new. It's like, not really. It's like I've been doing it for a long time, but drums sort of got in the way, just so to speak. I was like
Yeah.
playing all these gigs, so I didn't have time to do that. Lockdown, hey, no gigs, all the gigs went away, so I'm doing this. So that's the other thing. I've been trying to, I've been releasing a piece of music every month for a little over 3 years, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so I've sort of got a self-imposed deadline there. And yeah, that really keeps you busy, right?
Yeah.
And I got to play with the dogs down here. I got to keep them busy. So
And your music, your releases are very diverse too.
very,
It strikes me as
yes.
a purely inherently creative project. You're not trying to um, keep yourself rigidly to some
No,
identity.
no,
These are the
not at
things
all.
that are flowing out of me.
Yeah, that's totally intentional. It's like, oh, I listened to this Cajun uh, bagpipe thing. Um, and it's like, wow, this is cool. Always hated bagpipes, but this is really cool. So I wrote something, you know. Um, some music that's like sort of film music. I'm a huge fan of film music. Carlos Rivera, who is my colleague at the University of Miami, one of my favorite composers. So it's like, oh, I want to, I want to do some of that, and I'll write a funk tune. Let me write a jazz tune. Let me do some like really avant-garde thing. How about a music concrete thing? I reconnected with Jose Valentino, one of my great students from years ago, and I've written some things for him. And he plays flute and bass and vocal and saxophone and percussion, and he's great at all of it. And so he's been somebody I've been collaborating with. Yeah, it's crazy. I'm just
Yeah.
doing all these different things. And I guess if I was like really young and I'm trying to get a career in a certain style of music, then I would stay with that. I would market that, but I just don't care. I'm just, the composition is just something I just do for me, and I throw it out there. And if you listen to it, great. If not, whatever.
Yeah. And with all the things that you do, that I feel like you alluded to this a moment ago, where you changed your own perspective around it. Instead of saying I'm always busy and I'm almost getting pulled in too many directions, and now it sounds like an awareness that this flow actually charges me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So you have this felt sense of the intention and the clarity in your life. What does it feel like, or what does it look like when you get off track? Could you maybe share time that you would associate with that and how you get back on?
So sometimes off track means, uh, maybe I don't want to do this particular programming project, or maybe I've taken on too many obligations at the university, that kind of thing. And I could be writing, right? That's my current thing. Who knows? We may have this conversation in 5 years. It's like I'm, I'm an auto mechanic or something, I'm doing that. But right now, I think of getting off track means I'm not staying with the composition process. That's what's happening right now, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, I like being busy, but I would like to have time to do this other thing. And I thought about, oh, maybe I should just retire and just do that. But you know what? The the conversations that I have, as you well know, at the university with students, with colleagues, with all of that. Daphnis Prieto is right across the hall from me. Daphnis is arguably the greatest Latin jazz drummer on the planet. He's also sort of a Yoda, kind of like, you know, deep thinker. I love having that, right? So how could I possibly retire? It's not the long drive down to the university and the hours of teaching. It's just the human interaction. Uh, Whit Seidner sent me something the other day, ways of, he's always sending this stuff, ways of achieving longevity and all the usual things, fitness, diet, sleep, the usual things. But one of them is human interaction, right?
Yeah.
And it's a big one. And as you know, because of lockdown, uh, wow, a lot of that really went away. I mean, thank
Yeah.
goodness for Zoom, because can you imagine if lockdown had happened and we didn't have this particular technology? Whew, what would have happened then? But, um, you know, just face to face with people, is really, really important. And, you know, got to have that.
So when you look ahead, you mentioned, who knows, I might be an auto mechanic in 5 years. Is there anything that you're currently conscious of trying to cultivate and create that's not so present in your life?
I want to get deeper into composition, because that's, sort of where a lot of my focus has been, and there's a lot to learn in that area. Um, you know, I I'm not a keyboard player. Um, I wish maybe that my mom had paid for piano lessons, when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have been a piano player instead of a drummer or a keyboard player. So I know when I'm composing, I know what I want. It just takes me longer to get there, where I really envy, my pianist colleagues that could just, sit down. It's like, oh, what about this and this and this and this? And oh man, that's so cool. Of course, you know, drum drum programming is not something that I spent any time at all, because I have there's a set of E drums and a set of acoustic drums behind me. So hey, you know, but man, my dear friend Jose Valentino is a great drum set programmer. And he sent me a video the other day of another guy who's even higher level. I mean, he sits down and just with his fingers on the keyboard plays stuff that I just, wow, the great drum sounds and all of that. And it's really good. I might want to get into that a little bit more, right? So right now you see where my head's
Yeah.
at. I love to travel too. My wife and I have spent years traveling, mostly to Europe. We sort of focus on that. So, but I'd like to do a little more of that. I just, who knows? Hey man, I might be, you know, 5 years from now living in Paris and, being a sculptor, a painter. So who knows? Who knows what might happen?
Well, and it's funny because there's a characteristic openness that I keep hearing anytime you project toward the future, there's a really open spirit and air about it. And that makes me think about something early on in our conversation where you talk about the direct experience, and I dropped the word mystical or mysticism in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the keys that any philosopher or writer associates with that. There's this openness, an unconditional openness to things. Do you have any thoughts to riff on with that?
Being flexible, which I guess is sort of what we're talking about, being open, being flexible. You probably heard the phrase, don't be like stone, be like water, right?
Yeah.
And just being open to whatever comes along, I mean, God, my goodness, who could have predicted this pandemic? And I look back on it now and I go, I can't believe what we went through. We're still sort of going through it, but what we went through in the early stages. But I think a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us were adaptable, right? And it directly contributed to a class that I'm teaching with Nicole Yarling at the university, um, where the singers couldn't sing because they would spread germs, right? So they couldn't sing in a classroom. So we came up, and I think it was Nicole that came up with the idea. Oh, we'll have the rhythm section record their parts, and then the singers in their dorm rooms or whatever would sing over the top, and it blew up, and it became this whole production recording element to the class. Thank you, COVID, for that, right? But if we hadn't been flexible, you know, and open about it, so I think who knows what's around the corner, I think you really have to be kind of ready for anything, you
Yeah.
know?
I love
Um,
that last August I got to pop down and visit you when I was down in
uh-huh.
South Florida for
Yeah.
something. And I got to sit in on the Ruck Ensemble rehearsal.
Uh-huh.
And it's such a fantastic way to instill the accountability and the type of leadership that is really valuable in the
Mhm.
entertainment industry, because
Mhm.
the impetus is on the students in all
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
And you're just brilliantly facilitating the whole time is the way that I saw it. If they start to go off a cliff, you kind of pull them back, but
Uh-huh.
otherwise you're just trying to make sure that we're facilitating the best possible common outcome to arise out of this
Mhm.
group of students.
And hey, man, you know that uh, sometimes you just have to stay out of the way when it's a good ensemble. So you played in concert jazz band as well as I, right? Now it's Frost Jazz Orchestra, by the way, but concert jazz band. But I mean, Whit Snyder had a vision for years for that band, and you're not gonna say, "Oh, let's try this." No, 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 no. That's the band is the band, and that's their preconceived ideas, to so to speak, for what that's going to be. And rock ensemble. So, by the way, I never intended on it. That what is it? MDE 139. Give me a section number for this new ensemble. Okay, some people were doing this. The first four characters of my last name. I was thinking it was going to be, we'll come up with a name for this thing. Other schools have a rock ensemble. We have a rock ensemble. But the idea was garage rock band, no music ever, right? Create stuff in my studio in real time, right? Sometimes you have to work hard when you're a ensemble director, right?
Yeah.
And if they're not getting it, sometimes you have to work really hard. Man, the last couple of semesters, I just sit back and smile and enjoy. I have uh, a keyboard player who he's going to be a future MD, right? Carmelo, Mello, we call him. He just he he kind of runs the thing, but it's very collaborative. And you know, all I have to do is just smile and listen, and those are some nice moments. But what they're doing is they're developing their skill set of being collaborative, being creative, coming up with ideas. Um, it's all about the rapper and the top liner. So, I have to remind them sometimes that they're the ones that you're writing for, and making sure that you compromise somewhat for them so it doesn't become another funk fusion ensemble, right? Which you were a part of.
Yeah.
And it's a great experience for that. So I think sometimes you have to know when to jump in and direct it, which has happened a lot over the years, or you just like step back and let the students run the show because it's good for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You've had your finger on the pulse of multiple generations of students at that young
Mhm.
adult phase, this super critical phase of anyone's life.
Yeah.
I wonder what values, maybe evolutions, have you seen generationally? And what are you seeing right now as far as common values that are showing up in these students?
Now you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to develop your brand. You have to do, um, because marketing is such a big part of it. I'm preaching to the choir here of what you do. And so what's changed over the years is that the student, um, at least the ones that really have a desire and a knowing for what they want to do, um, yeah, they develop their skills. A lot of the contemporary students are multi-instrumentalists. They're writers. They're producers. We make sure of that. And then they develop their marketing skills, and that's a whole different thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when you were in school, you wouldn't think about, um, all right, I'm going to be a multi-instrumentalist. I'm going to be a marketer. You know, I'm going to be a songwriter. You wouldn't really think about that, but it's a thing now,
Yeah.
and I think that's changed people's students' points of view about, what they're going to do. Um, I think there's a lot out there, especially, I'm sorry to say, my older friends, the older generation, you talk to them about music. It's like, oh, there's no good music happening anymore. It's awful. Look what's happened. And back in my day, we had this and this and this. It's just like, it's gone now. Oh, no, it's not gone. There's a lot of great music out there. I think you could make an argument that is buried under an avalanche of garbage, right?
Yeah.
But it's there. It's absolutely there. I mean,
Yeah.
you can, I know it to be true because a lot of my students, former students, are cranking out some really great stuff. But you talk to a younger musician, you don't really so much get that attitude unless they're getting it from their parents or whatever. It's like, no, I'm going to go out, I'm going to do this. You've got to promote that
Yeah.
because it's going to happen. And I, for a lot of students, and I think if you put this thought in their heads that's like, no, it's not like it used to be, and it's just not going to happen, and it's so competitive, then you've killed that. I think, people find a way, you know? I think it's part of the human existence. You find a way.
I love that I hear the same sort of multi-hyphenate approach that you have naturally taken to your own life, that your students are needing to embody that in this entrepreneurial spirit now too.
Mm,
That
yeah.
it's like the skills required are not all from the same bucket, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you can create your own mix the same way you've,
Mhm.
what I would describe it as you've designed your own lifestyle and your own
Mhm.
portfolio career, essentially,
Mhm.
of things that not everyone would just put together versus a lot of career paths that are, hey,
Mhm.
you just go get this degree and you get that job and you do that until you retire. There's this multi-hyphenate reality that also I think offers a great reward as much as it brings pressure and other challenges. It sounds like you're an example of how it can bring great rewards.
Multi-hyphen. I like that, Mark. It's like
uh,
the newer version of wears many hats.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So could I offer up a scenario and invite you to make a sales pitch?
Uh-oh.
Um, if you have the attention of the entire world, all 8 billion of us or so, for the next, 30 seconds or 60 seconds, like a commercial spot, and you could advocate for a particular value and why it would benefit people to adopt this value more centrally in their lives,
Mm.
what would it be?
I mean, so many thoughts, you know, flood my mind with that. I think, and we've talked about some of these flexibility, you know, which, and along with that comes openness, right? I think when you talk about that concept about, um, kind of being ready for anything, that's maybe something we've been talking about this whole time. People find a way. That's flexibility, right?
Yeah.
That's openness. Um, the idea of compassion, which I think kind of you have to you have to have some of that too to navigate. This is my path. That I'm going to be flexible and stuff can happen, but if I'm empathetic, compassionate, um, then I'll be better equipped to navigate that rather than if I'm I mean, you could draw an argument with a lot of people about this. I'm not um, the person that goes in and does what I want to do at the expense of others, right? I've never have been that type of person, but using compassion and empathy, you create your life, you know, uh, with the idea that this is something we talked about a lot. You're beyond your name and form. You know, you're not, I am not drummer, educator, composer, traveler, dog lover, married guy. I'm beyond all of that. So, um, if you're flexible and open, then I think you have more of an understanding of that you're um, you're navigating your life, um, but unencumbered by these titles, these um, these um, labels that people put on you.
Yeah.
I think about this a lot. What if there were no drums, computers? Like, I'm thinking about the stuff that I do for my vocation. What if that didn't exist? Well, I would do something else. Who knows what that would be? But if you define yourself with these titles, then you're just assuming that at some point those things were, created. And no, what if they never existed? What would I be? I would still be me, right?
Yeah.
Doing the things that I do, you know.
What arises when you can be flexible and open sounds like a life without limits, a sense of self without
Yeah,
limitation.
yeah, yeah. And it's hard. And I, you know, I'm here to tell you that that's difficult. And, you know, um, I do have limitations, right? And I feel that. But in my heart of hearts, I would like to be the person uh, that can exemplify
Yeah.
that, that value or set of values.
Yeah. Steve, I really appreciate you taking time today to
Of
chat
course,
with
man.
me
Thanks.
and share all
Thank
these
you.
other aspects of you that some of them are still new to me each time we get to talk. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
That's all for this episode of Because This Matters. I believe that these are conversations that matter. If something from this conversation spoke to you, please consider sharing it with someone. Maybe take a moment to like, rate, follow, or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. You can learn more about my work as a coach and speaker at markpoise.com. Until next time, remember that a life aligned with values is a fulfilled one.